kind to us, or might be very angry, or might have different roles. Instead of focusing on them, we should focus on what is my role. Like, their roles are set that way, but the only role that I have the ability to make, you know, changes in is my role. And what is my role as a muhsin in reaction to all of these people? So that was our last discussion that we left, and we wanted everyone to reflect on. And now I'd like to ask everyone who's joining us today to, you know, share with us their, you know, their contemplations on this meeting, and how far did they go. So who would like to start and volunteer? Isra, you were the one who gave us this beautiful image, so did you think about it more? MashaAllah. Okay, so I will just add a little reflection that kept coming to my mind through this week before we ask our sister Yamina to, inshallah, guide us through the rest of the surah. And that reflection was just the continuation of that imagery that Isra gave us. And that is, like, you know, just like, you know, when people are in a theater, the players, they always are waiting for next day's newspaper to read how did everyone, like, you know, what did the critics, you know, say about their performance. Was the performance good? How good was it? Everyone is trying, and people keep playing the same role again and again and again. And as they're playing the roles again and again, you know, they know when they played the role perfectly, and they say, oh, this time when I played this role, you know, I did my best performance. So if we can think of the same, and if we can think of our reports about the role that we played, be in the day where we hold our papers and say, come people and look at the beautiful report that's been written about me. I have done one of my best roles as a muhsin. I have done one of my best roles as a witnesser of God. So if we can, and again, we'll keep playing the roles again and again. God keeps putting us in the same situation with different people that maybe annoy us, that maybe we think that are making injustice to us, or, you know, that are ignoring us, belittling us, whatever the feeling is, until we get to play our best role as a muhsin, and then we have different players set up for our next role. That was my reflection. Jazakumullah khair. Sister Yamina, please take us into the beautiful finale of this beautiful surah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome back to Always Receiving Nur's weekly classes on Yusuf's story in the Quran. May we always be open to receiving the light of divine guidance, and may we live with that guidance, inshallah. اللهم افتح لنا أبواب حكمتك وانشر علينا رحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. So last week we stopped at ayah 108 of Surat Yusuf, and this ayah was telling us how God tells the Prophet ﷺ to tell the people around him. Remember, the people who do not believe in God except that they commit shirk. He's telling him to tell them, this is my way. I call unto God on the basis of clear perception, both I and those who follow me. Glory be to God, He is free of every imperfection. I have nothing to do with those who commit shirk. And the original is قل هذه سبيلي أدعو إلى الله على بصيرة أنا ومن اتبعني وَسُبْحَانَ اللَّهِ وَمَا أَنَا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. وَمَا أَنَا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ, there is an emphasis. I definitely am not one of the mushriks. I am not a mushrik, definitely. So the Prophet ﷺ and his followers are asked to take a stand, a firm stand against the majority of people who don't believe in God without shirk. Remember in 108, just a few, 2 ayahs before, the ayah said, sorry, it was 106, right? وَمَا يُؤْمِنُ أَكْثَرُهُمْ بِاللَّهِ إِلَّا وَهُمْ مُشْرِكُونَ. So most people, most of them, do not believe in God without committing shirk, which means without associating other powers with God, which means that God is not the only source to rely on in their perspective, at least whether they are aware of it or not. So what does it mean to take a stand against shirk? To affirm that one is definitely not a mushrik, to affirm that one has no intention to fall into shirk. In other words, to intend to remain vigilant in living with the awareness of Tawheed, because the opposite of shirk, when you don't commit shirk, means you are a muwahhid, you practice Tawheed. And what are the implications of such a clear and firm stand in this world and in the next? And so the answers to these questions unfold in the following ayahs in ways that I personally would not have expected. It's just so beautiful, and it's the most beautiful thing is how everything is neatly connected with everything else. There is no inconsistency. It just stands there and makes me feel awe. It's just so beautiful, mashallah, and so powerful. So the next ayah says, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِنْ قَبْلِكَ إِلَّا رِجَالًا نُوحِي إِلَيْهِمْ مِنْ أَهْلِ الْقُرَى أَفَلَمْ يَسِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَيَنْظُرُوا كَيْفَ كَانَ عَاقِبَةُ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ وَلَدَارُ الْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لِلَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. So it says, the messengers whom we raised before you, whom we sent before you, and to whom we sent down revelations, were only men, and they were from among those living in earthly habitations. Have these people not traveled in the earth that they may observe the end of their predecessors? Certainly, the abode of the hereafter is much better for those who are conscious of God. Will you still not use your reason? أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. So this ayah is drawing our attention to the role of the messengers, or the significance, let's say, of prophethood, of nubuwwah. Who are the messengers? In this ayah, like, it's telling us, these people, or it's telling primarily the Prophet ﷺ, these people who believe in God only while committing shirk, they don't listen to you because it's difficult for them to believe that you are a messenger of God. And the ayah explains why. Why is it difficult for people who commit shirk to believe that you are a messenger of God? It says, because the messengers are only human beings who lived in earthly habitations. So the mushrikeen, according to this ayah, expect the messengers to be some super beings. I mean, it doesn't make sense to them that human beings would be messengers of God, would receive communication from God. They can't see how someone who is not a super being can be the messenger of God. So the underlying understanding here is that human beings, they look at themselves and they take themselves as a unit of measurement, as a point of reference, and they decide that human beings can't receive messages from God. How come this man claims to be receiving a message from God? It is impossible for human beings to receive anything from God. God is so far from everything. He is the creator of everything. Remember when in other parts of the Quran, when it talks about the mushrikeen, they are not people who deny the existence of God. They accept that everything is from God, that even their sight and their hearing is from God. However, the Quran says, then why do you still not live accordingly? So it's not about what we claim God to be. It's about something more subtle. And by the way, we can ask ourselves here something, this is very, very important, I think, a very important question to ask ourselves individually. Would we still believe in the messengers had we lived at their time and seen how they were regular people like all of us? Of course, I can also ask, do we believe in the messengers right now? What does the messenger mean for me right now? And the hint, of course, is that I personally would first listen to the message. Is it the truth? Is it guidance? Is it healing? Is it rahmah? Then I'd want to learn from them, from the messengers, how to surrender to that truth, how to live with that truth. And I expect them to be the most beautiful living examples of that message. So we'll get back to that, inshallah. So back to our question, before I get back to the messengers and the message, again here in Ayah 109, it says, have they not gone around and seen, sorry, observe the end of their predecessors, how like that everything is fani, that everything is transient, that everything will end, that they themselves, that their life is passing. And then it says, certainly the abode of the hereafter is much better for those who are conscious of God. So we talked before about the relationship, the connection between everything, being aware of the transience of everything, and believing in the ayat, perceiving everything in this world as ayah. Because there is no way I can truly believe in the hereafter, I can truly believe in God if I am not aware that life is always passing. Because if I live my life as it is, as if I'm staying here forever, then where is my connection with God? Where is my creation with my relationship with God, my relationship with the hereafter? Then it becomes a claim only. So again here it says, well, tell them, go and see what happened to those before them. They all left. And certainly the abode of the hereafter is much better for those who are conscious of God. And it says, will you not use your reason? Will you not stop and reflect? And how is this related to their belying the prophets because they think, oh, they are only human beings. They live like us in, in houses. They are not super beings. So how come God will speak to them? How can they receive a message from God? What does it mean to receive a message from God anyways for the person who lives in ghafla in that way? So back to our question of why would most people think, this is what this A is telling us, that messengers should be some special, extraordinary beings. Why would they either not believe in the messengers or make them into what they are not to fit their vision of what a messenger is? And an extreme example that comes to my mind is the deification of Isa alayhi salam. So Jesus is not a messenger in for lots of people. So what do these people who believe in God only with shirk think messengers are? What do they think messengers are, that they think they have to be very special? And if they are not very special, if they are human beings like us, then they can't be receiving messages from God. So what do they think messengers are? Obviously, the issue is related to what they think the message is about. Because after all, it is the message that makes the messenger a messenger. The message, I mean the message that they bring, the message that they lived, and the message that they teach, because they are all the same message. So the problem with the messenger is really the problem first with the message. And according to what we've learned during the last 2 weeks, those who can't believe in God without shirk do not perceive the ayat in creation as ayat. That's what we've been repeating, because this is what this story, this surah has been teaching us again and again. In other words, what does it mean? It means that their daily lives are cut off from God. There is no connection, direct connection with their Rabb. And more importantly, it means that they don't realize that God speaks through his creational ayat, through his ayat in the heavens and on earth, through his ayat in creation, as well as through the Quranic ayat. Sorry. This is extremely, extremely important, because that is the only way we can live as muhsins. Remember, a muhsin is to live in that presence of God. Live as though you see God. Where do you see God? You see God in his ayat, in the creation. Remember, the ayat are like, to give a metaphor, to make it easier to understand, like mirrors. Mirrors to what? To the divine names. That's how we get to know our Rabb, the Creator. So, when I say cut off, we may think, but people pray to God. Then think about it. Do they really pray to God? Most people call on God, pray to God, or ask for help when they are in need, when they are in a crisis situation. And then again, they forget, as we reminded in the Quran, and I am going to read the ayahs because
Hello?
there is something going on and I don't know what it is.
Technology will always improve. Modern vehicles, front flat tires, all these things are great. may be able to fly to an unmanned aircraft to gather some of that data.
Do you know where this is coming from?
To then try to get out of the way. But the technology.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know where this was coming from.
Sister Nadra, you muted. Can you mute back again? You're unmuted again.
What should I do?
You just muted a second ago. Can you mute yourself again? Or could you mute her?
Should I hit *6?
Okay, you're good now.
So I'm going to read ayat 22 to 24 from Surat Yunus, Surah number 10. Well, Alia asked me to read the Arabic, but when I read the Arabic, it's going to make it even longer. So it's going to last much longer. So I'll go ahead and read it. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. هو الذي ييسركم في البر والبحر حتى إذا كنتم في الفلك وجرين بهم بريح طيبة وفرحوا بها جاءت ريح عاصف وجاءهم الموج من كل مكان وظنوا أنهم أحيط بهم دعوا الله مخلصين له الدين لئن أنجيتنا من هذه لنكونن من الشاكرين فلما أنجاهم إذا هم يبغون في الأرض بغير الحق يا أيها الناس إنما بغيكم على أنفسكم متاع الحياة الدنيا ثم إلينا مرجعكم فننبئكم بما كنتم تعملون إنما مثل الحياة الدنيا كماء أنزلناه من السماء فاختلط به نبات الأرض مما يأكل الناس والأنعام حتى إذا أخذت الأرض زخرفها وزينت وظن أهلها أنهم قادرون عليها أتاها أمرنا ليلا أو نهارا فجعلنا حصيدا كأن لم تغن بالأمس كذلك نفصل الآيات لقوم يتفكرون. So it's saying it is He who enables you, it is God who enables you to travel on both land and sea. And behold, when you are on a boat running before a fair wind, you rejoice at it. And then a tempest storm comes upon them, and the waves come at them from every side, and they realize there is no way of escape. They call on God at that moment, sincere in their faith, in Him alone. If you save us from this, we will truly be among the grateful. Mukhlisina lahuddin means at that moment, they know, they are aware that nothing can save them but God. Yet, when He does save them, they behaved outrageously on earth, offending against all right, all people. All your outrageous deeds are bound to fall back upon yourselves. There is the enjoyment of life in this world, and then your return is to us. Then we will inform you about what you were doing. The metaphor of the life of this world is that of water, which we send down from the sky and which then mingles with the plants of the earth to provide nourishments for both people and animals. Then, when the earth is at its loveliest and takes on its most adorned appearance, and its people think they have it under their control, our command comes upon it by night or by day, and we reduce it to dried out stubble. And though it had not been flourishing just the day, it had not been flourishing just the day before. One day it's all flourishing and suddenly it's all dry. Thus we make our ayat clear for people who reflect. So can you see that here Allah is saying, when you need us, you call, and then again you forget. And why do you forget? It says here, because you forget again that everything is going back to God, that everything is fani, everything is transient. And these are the ayat, it says, because the transience itself is an ayah. The fact that everything comes and goes is also an ayah, a very, very powerful ayah. And there is no way we are reading the ayah, or we believe in the ayat, or we are living our life with ihsan, seeing the ayat everywhere. That's what it means, seeing that everything is coming from God, and therefore seeing the beautiful aspect of everything, even when it doesn't look nice superficially. It's because we can't do that when we are unaware, when we forget about the transience of this life. So just because we call on God for help when we're in need does not mean that we are aware of our utter dependence on Him. Yes, we know it, but what's the point if I keep forgetting it? And it doesn't mean that we are aware that all beings, all creation is under His control and only His control and always. And that everything are ayat, constantly flowing from alam al-ghaib and constantly bringing us new messages about our Rabb's beautiful names and confirming the message of the Quran. So that's one step. But if we're stuck there and we keep forgetting and going back to step one again, then we're not traveling the path. And it certainly does not mean that we realize, just because we call on God when we need help, it does not mean that we realize that God speaks through His creational ayats, just as He speaks through the Quranic ayat. This is very, very important. So why don't people, or most people, as the Quran keeps saying, most people also are not grateful, remember? So why most people don't realize that God speaks through His creational ayat, just as He speaks through the Quranic ayat? Why is it so? Because everyday events do not remind them of their Rabb. They do not realize, or they forget, that every event, every being is an ayah and has a message from our Rabb. And why they forget? Because they are engrossed in this transient life as though they were never to leave. This is very, very important because so far I can't see another reason. Some people don't know about it at all. But once we learned, once we've been exposed to this beautiful reality through the Quran, how come we're not prioritizing it? It means we have other more important things that we believe in that we may not be aware of. Otherwise, there is no way. I mean, when we're hungry, can anyone keep us away from, do we need motivation to go and eat or enjoy the food? This is the same. It means we don't feel the need for it. If I don't feel the need for it, that's it. Here, understanding is not a purely intellectual activity, although it may start as such. It is something those answers, the knowledge we learn through listening, through learning, will only unfold in our inner world, in our ruh, in our heart, to the extent that I feel the need for it. It's like digesting it. If I'm not aware of my need for it, then it's sitting there. It may look beautiful, but I'm not aware that it's food to be eaten. It looks like just, you know, different, like fruit will look like different things with beautiful shapes. But I'm not aware of their tastes. And they don't nourish me. So again, this is related to the crucial significance of being aware of the ayat in the creation. And that's why, remember, in the Quran it says the people in the hereafter, when they find themselves in the fire of hell, they will say, oh, we wish we were aware of the signs. It is directly related to where we find ourselves. So do you realize that unless we are aware that everything, every being, every event is an ayah, and live our life accordingly with that awareness, not to just claim it, there is no way we will be taught wisdom. You know, hikmah, the hikmah that was taught to Yusuf alayhi salam, the hikmah that is taught to us in the Quran and in this surah, in this beautiful story of Yusuf, the hikmah that is needed for ta'wil al-ahadith, for the interpretation of events, the hikmah that will cleanse us and purify our perception so that we can see the beautiful divine names everywhere, behind even the most painful events. The hikmah that Allah tells us is khayran kathira. It says, يؤتي الحكمة من يشاء ومن يؤتي الحكمة فقد أوتي خيرا كثيرا وما يذكر إلا أولو الألباب. So it says in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 269, God gives wisdom to whomever He wills, and he who has been given wisdom, who has been given hikmah, has been given great good. But no one pays heed except people of insight. People of insight realize how important this hikmah is, how great good it is. And this is what makes the Quranic message unique, what makes it so beautiful and so relevant to us here and now. Because it teaches us how to decipher the creational ayat, the creational signs in our every here and now, in our life, in everything. And that is why we are encouraged again and again in the Quran to go out there and observe the world and witness the truth of the message. The message of what? The message of the Quran, as well as the message given through the ayat of the creation, because they tell the same message. The Quran explains the ayat in creation, and the ayat in creation are in turn confirming, from one perspective confirming the truth of the Quran, from another perspective unfolding it, because it's one thing to say that God knows, it's another thing to actually live it and experience it in your life, and as though taste that name in your life. So they complement each other, and there is no way to read the Quran on its own without the creational ayat, because that's exactly what the Quran is saying. It is talking about the creational ayat. So if I'm reading the Quran and never going out there and doing what it is telling me to do, I am not following the Quran. So what comes to mind, and there are lots of ayat, but one of them is in Surah Al-Mulk, Surah 67, ayah 3 to 4. It says, ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت فارجع البصر هل ترى من فطور ثم ارجع البصر كرتين ينقلب إليك البصر خاسئا وهو حسير. So he says, it's talking about God who created the seven heavens in layers and this, and then it says, You will not find any flaw in the creation of the All-Merciful. And subhanAllah, it doesn't say the creation of God. It says fi khalq ar-Rahman. Because when you go and look at it, you will find how much rahmah there is. It's all created as a rahmah, as a gift for us. Or at least the aspect that looks to us looks like that. Because all the divine names are so beautiful. And it says, look again. Do you see any gaps? Then look again and again. Your sight will return to you dazzled and exhausted because it will never find any flaw. So you understand now why the Prophet ﷺ was asked to say the ayah we started with today. It says, قُلْ هَذِهِ سَبِيلِي أَدْعُو إِلَى اللَّهِ عَلَى بَصِيرَةٍ أَنَا وَمِنِ اتَّبَعَنِي وَسُبْحَانَ اللَّهِ وَمَا أَنَا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. So this is my way. I call unto God on the basis of clear perception, of sight, of seeing. Basira, ارجع البصر. ارجع البصر. ثم ارجع البصر ينقلب إليك البصر. And here, هذه سبيلي أدعو إلى الله على بصيرة. The word is, one of them is sight and the other one is insight. So it's seeingly. Our faith is based on clear perception. It's not supposed to be blind faith. We don't follow this message and this messenger, alayhi salatu wassalam, blindly. We follow this path because we have witnessed the ayat that indicate that it is the path of haqq. And of course, I can only witness if I know how to read and listen to the ayat. If I don't understand, if I don't have the hikmah to understand the ayat in creation, then I'll say, because the Quran said it, it must be right. What do you mean it must be right? Have you lived it? Have you witnessed it? Have you observed it? I don't know. And the hikmah will be given when we go and follow the Quran. So once we surrender, once we trust that, at least be open to that possibility, then we start realizing how it is haqq, it is truth, it is reality. So without hikmah, you see why hikmah is so important? I cannot confirm the truth of the signs I see, the ayat I witness, and so I can't witness anything. And everyone says it's very easy to be a Muslim because you just witness La ilaha illallah, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. But it's very easy to say, but can I say something when I don't mean it? Or what I don't know what it means? Of course, there are levels, but even at a first level, still there should be some awareness of what it means. So when we witness this way, when we read the signs and confirm the message, then we understand that God speaks through His creational signs. He speaks through His creation, and that He speaks to all of us. He inspires even the bee. How can the bee make honey otherwise? And so we realize that it is totally possible that He speaks in other ways to the messengers. I don't know how He speaks to them, because he did not speak to me that way, but I know that it's possible because He speaks to everyone in different ways. And I can guess that, yes, it is very likely that He speaks to them in special ways because they are the people who are especially aware of their vulnerability. They are especially aware of their needs, their weakness. And therefore, they are able to realize the full extent of their Rabb's favor on his creation. Remember, we appreciate the food to the extent that we are aware of our hunger. And so this is the same thing. They are aware of their hunger for everything, for all the divine names. And as thus, they were the most grateful and the most able to receive revelation from their Rabb and to understand it and live by it and teach it to others, teach it to us without distortion, without being a veil, without meddling in it. They were totally transparent in their ubudiyya, because ubudiyya is the gist of the message they teach, was like a clean mirror to his rububiyyah. So they reflected his rububiyyah to us without any stains of shirk. And that's why some people prefer to say in the shahada rather لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. There is an emphasis on عبده because that is the gist of his risala, that he's teaching us ubudiyya. He lived his ubudiyya, and that's how he delivered the message. By being transparent, he becomes a mirror to God's message. Subhanallah. So I can understand, once I am conversant with the creational signs, once I know that God speaks to us in various ways, speaks to all of us, then I say, yes, this is possible. There, he did speak. And so as we understand what the message of the Quran is about, then we start understanding what the ayat are. The ayat in the Quran, as well as the ayat they refer to in the creation, and vice versa. And the more we understand what the ayat are about, then we understand the message of the Quran more. Then we realize the significance of the messengers. And we also realize that, yes, God does communicate. He does communicate with the messengers. I don't know how he does it, but I know it works. I mean, we don't know how electricity works, but it works. We're all using it. And no one says, oh, I'm not going to believe in it because I don't know how it works. We see the light, and the light is the light of the message they bring to our life. So I don't know how he spoke to them, but he definitely spoke to them. And especially this is easier to understand and confirm when we realize that God speaks in many ways. Just as God is Basir, we say God is Basir, he's seeing, has nothing to do with my sight. My sight, my seeing, is only like a unit of measurements for me to understand that God is Basir, to understand his name, to understand that he's what seeing is about. But it's not comparable, it's not of the same nature. It is not limited like mine, and it is because mine is limited that I say, oh, I get a sense of what seeing is, although it's not the same thing. It's like my sight is like a thermometer. God's sight is like the heat. The thermometer measures the heat, but it is not heat. And so is my sight, for instance. And his kalam, his speech, is not comparable to our limited speech, which is only like a unit of measurements to kalam Allah again. But because we have been given a sense of communication, a sense of speaking, a sense of speech, not only in words but in other ways, then we can understand, we can grasp that yes, God is speaking to us, all of us, right now, and why not? He can speak to the messengers, and the messengers don't have to be gods in order to receive the message. And no wonder that those who are in a state of ghafla or in a state of shirk can't see this reality. Because in order to receive this reality, to perceive this reality, I have to be aware of my not only limitedness, but my qualities are not really qualities of mine. They are only units of measurements. That's what Fanny is about. They are transient, they are limited, they are not mine. They can go anytime. It's like my life. I say it's my life, but I can't grasp it, I can't hold it. It's like the reflection in a mirror. It's there in the mirror, but it doesn't belong to the mirror. It is not, the point of reference is not the mirror, but wherever it is coming from. So the point of reference for whatever qualities we have is not ourselves, as we think when we are in a state of ghafla, but wherever it is coming to us from. And that's why we think memory is ours, but we forget things. And then suddenly we say, oh, I remembered. If it was mine, I shouldn't remember. It should be there all the time. So never mind, this is a long story, but just to give you a clue about how this is related to ghafla. When we are in state of ghafla, then we are not aware of these connections. Not only that, but when we are in a state of ghafla, we perceive, or let's say they perceive, to make it easier, themselves as disconnected from the Rabb, from their maker, as though they existed separately and independently from him. It's not the fact, but it seems so when we forget. And so they can't imagine what it means for God, the creator of all the worlds, to communicate to a created being, because in their perception, the created being is completely disconnected, completely independent, completely separate, exists completely separately from God. So how can they communicate? When one is the creator of everything, the other one is a created being. So they have no unit of measurements for this, or they have the unit of measurement. They are not aware of their units of measurements because they think that this is my side, my life, they don't realize that it is given to me now. So when they hear that the messengers received messages from their Rabb, they cannot confirm it, they cannot grasp it. So either they outwardly deny it, or really never reflect on its meaning and its significance for their life. And so they think they accept the messengers, but actually the messenger is not a messenger for them. I mean, I may say, yes, the messenger, but he's not a messenger for me in my life. He's not the one I look to when I have something to solve in my life. Then he's a messenger, but he's not the messenger for me. So although I'm not outwardly denying the messengers, practically they don't exist they have no place in my life. Or what some people do is reinterpret the messengership so it fits their own perception of the world, and often it boils down to not acknowledging the messengers as messengers. So the whole issue is, how can God communicate to mortal beings? This is the question. This is why we say mortal beings, messengers. How can they receive, how can God speak to them? What does it mean? And this is the issue underlying the divinity of Jesus, Isa alayhi salam. I'll say Jesus, because I'm thinking of Christianity. So in answer to why did Jesus come into the world, we are told, this is quote, "Imagine the creator of this vast universe who has all knowledge, all power coming to the ones he created to make himself known to them. Well, that's exactly that took place almost 2,000 years ago, to communicate with us in the best way possible. To communicate with us in the best way possible, God became flesh. He became one of the creatures he made, man." This is taken to like the other end of the spectrum. Either the messenger is not there, completely ignored, or we have to make him into someone special, otherwise he can't be the messenger. Among us, mostly, this is not going to be the case, although it can be the case for some people. But mostly when we think of the Prophet ﷺ, then it is just, he's not a role model in our life. But if we think of any case of idolizing people, it is because of this. Like, this person is super, not a normal human being. In any case, the messenger is not there, because the messenger is the one who brings me a message through his way of living, through his teaching, whatever. So as we can see, our understanding of the messenger is directly related to how we perceive the message of our Rabb. For the mushrik, or for us when we live in a state of ghafla, the creation is divided into ordinary and extraordinary. Ordinary is everyday events. We take them for granted. That's how things happen. Extraordinary is things that we were not expecting. Miracles, things that, we can't explain otherwise. Why? Because we're not used to seeing them on a daily basis. And if we start seeing the same thing on a daily basis, we won't count it as a miracle anymore. And why is it so? Because of the way they live their lives. When we are in a state of ghafla, we live our life normally. What we call normally, we actually mean we're taking care of our lives. We're taking care of ourselves. And as we said before, we remember God in times of crisis. When we need help, we seek his help. And when the crisis is over, then we go back to our old ways, as we've seen in Surat Yunus. So the gist of ghafla is forgetting that we are needy, that we are weak, and that it is beyond our control to take care of any of our needs. It's not like I'm taking care of my life and from time to time I need God. I can't take care even of my breathing. And I say even, but of course you understand that if I can't breathe, everything is over. All my life, when I say my life with a capital M-Y, I make it into a huge bubble. It is a bubble. Because if you just can't breathe for a few minutes, that's it. The bubble dies away. Everything is beyond our control, even breathing. Breathing the already existing air, with the already existing lungs, with the already existing system and respiratory system and everything. This is because life is not ours, so we have absolutely no control over it. And you can reflect on it more and more and more. But we imagine that we're struggling to fulfill our needs, that we're doing something, and so we oversee rububiyyah. We don't see it. We're so busy with other things. And we don't see the ayat. We don't see them as ayat. We're struggling with them. And that's because the ghafil does not realize that those everyday, ordinary things are not ordinary. They are miracles, miracles of divine power, miracles of divine rahmah, miracles of divine beauty. Look at the miracle of breathing. The things that we take the most for granted. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that amazing that we can breathe? And not only we can breathe, all living beings breathe. So they are all ayat. And in the Quran, the word miracle is not used. It doesn't say mu'jiza. The miracles of the prophets, of the messengers, like the miracles of Isa alayhi salam, they are all called ayat. Ayah is used for everything. For rain, for growing food, for Isa alayhi salam healing the leper, for everything. Because they are all ayat and they are all miracles. And they all indicate the divine encompassing power and knowledge and wisdom and all the divine names. So giving healing through a plant, through some medicine, is as miracle as healing through a human hand. In both cases, the cause is divine will. As Isa alayhi salam says, bi'idhnillah. It is bi'idhnillah, by God, with God's permission. He says, Inni قد جئتكم بآية من ربكم أني أخلق لكم من الطين كهيئة الطير فأنفخ فيه فيكون طيرا بإذن الله وأبرئ الأكمه والأبرص وأحيي الموت بإذن الله وأنبئكم بما تأكلون وما تدخرون في بيوتكم إن في ذلك لآيات لكم إن كنتم مؤمنين. So in Ali Imran, Surah 3, Ayah 49, Isa alayhi salam says, I have brought you an ayah, a sign, an ayah from your Rabb. Ayatin min Rabbikum. I will create the shape of a bird out of clay for you, and then breathe into it, and it will be a bird by God's permission, bi'idhnillah. And I will heal the blind and lepers, and bring the dead to life by God's permission. And I will tell you what you eat, and what you store up in your homes. There is an ayah for you in that if you are believers. It means if you are believers without shirk. Because if we are believers in God but with shirk, then we will say, oh, this is a miracle, and then carry on our life. So in the same way, creating a fig tree out of a tiny fig seed. I don't know if you have realized when you're eating seeds, all those dots that you see in the fig are actually seeds. So that tiny, tiny fig seed, out of it is created a fig tree, and a fig tree can grow very huge, like a 2-story house. And this is as miraculous as sending from heaven a table laden with food. Actually, maybe more miraculous, from a tiny, tiny seed, a huge tree full of fruits, full of the same seeds. Isn't that as miraculous as sending from heaven a table, a ma'idah laden with food? Just because we're not used to it, it is not more miraculous when we stop and reflect. They are all ayat. When the apostles ask Isa alayhi salam for a ma'idah, for a meal from heaven, Isa alayhi salam says, Allahumma rabbana أنزل علينا مائدة من السماء تكون لنا عيدا لأولنا وآخرنا وآية منك وارزقنا وأنت خير الرازقين. So he says, Oh God, our Rabb, send down upon us a repast from heaven. It shall be an ever-recurring feast for us, for the first and the last of us, and an ayah from you, and provide us our sustenance, for you are the best of providers. So he knows that Allah provides us through the tree, through the heaven. They are all, he says, it is an ayah from you. He repeatedly, whatever is happening, he says it's an ayah from you. So everything is extraordinary. Nothing is ordinary, except for our taking it for granted, of course. And why we take it for granted? Because of our ghafla, because we forget. Just because we saw something happening again and again doesn't make it less wonderful, like our breathing. Of course, to see the world this way, as everything is an ayah, everything is extraordinary, everything is a miracle, then we have to be conscious that we are constantly blessed with favor, which means we have to be aware of our endless needs, and we're totally unable to provide for ourselves. Just because we go to the market to get the already existing food doesn't make us providers. And the way our bodies are nourished with that food is totally beyond our control. We only put the food in our mouth, think about it, and then wait. That's it. We don't know what's going on. It just happens. Bi-idhnillah. So this means we have to live in conscious ubudiyah. You remember, ubudiyah is practicing tawheed in our daily life. And this is precisely what the messengers teach us. This is the message of the Quran. This is the message of the messengers. And if I understand the message this way, then I would not belie the messengers. I wouldn't say, how come you are receiving messages from God? Because whatever we've been discussing, because of my imaginary message. So the prophets are the leaders in ubudiyah, the leaders in ihsan. So ubudiyah, or that practiced tawheed, is their most important goal in life, and it is the gist of their message, of their teachings, the gist of the teachings of the Quran, as the Prophet ﷺ was the embodied Quran, كان خلقه القرآن, or the living Quran. So why is the role of the messengers important for us? Because they teach us how to live the message. And the message is what matters, because it is the truth. And what makes the messenger is the message. The messenger relevant and important for me. What makes me follow the messenger is not his being a human, any human being. It's not that part. It's the part that what the mirror is reflecting. So the ghafil can't see that the messenger himself, his life is an ayah, is like the supreme ayah, the supreme sign. reflecting the message, because the ghafil doesn't see anything as an ayah anyway. Everything is an ayah, everything is a communication from God. The prophet is a different kind of communication, but still a communication. I don't want to get into the differences in Kalam because it's a completely different subject. Sorry. So what matters is that the message is the truth, it is the reality. And when we don't understand the message, then we belie the messengers consciously or not. And so the next ayah, 110, says حتى إذا استيأس الرسل وظنوا أنهم قد كذبوا جاءهم نصرنا فننجي من نشاء ولا يرد بأسنا عن القوم المجرمين. So it says it also happened with the earlier messengers that for long they preached and people paid no heed until the messengers despaired of their people. And the people also fancied that they had been told lies by the messengers. Then suddenly our help came to the messengers, and when such an occasion comes, we save whom we will. As for the guilty, the criminals, actually, al-Muslimin, our chastisement cannot be averted from them. And here, ba'suna is really severe chastisement. So even when we think we accept this surah, for instance, as revelation, we may not see or accept the messages it is teaching us. It's not like I'm not accepting it. I'm not even seeing them. And why I'm not seeing them? Because my insight is not open, because that's not my intention. I'm busy with something else. So many people would read this surah, for instance, the story, Yusuf's story, as a story of resignation, as a story of patience in hardship, as a story of how hard Yusuf alayhi salam's life was, but he was still so patient. Because Yusuf alayhi salam went through so many hardships. But they see it as an awful life. But the good thing is that he did not complain. Why did he not complain? There is no reason. Because it's not easy to see the beautiful story of Ubudiyya towards that perfect Rububiyyah within those sad events, those painful events. When we are stuck in the event themselves, when we and then so we can't see beyond the events themselves, we can't see what they signify, we don't interact with them as ayat, as the surah is telling us, the story is telling us. So we stuck there with this message. Never mind the fact that we are guided from the beginning. We were told that this is not only any beautiful story, but the most beautiful story. It says, نحن نقص عليك أحسن القصص بما وحينا إليك هذا القرآن وإن كنت من قبله لمن الغافلين. We'll tell you we narrate to you the best of stories, the most beautiful story in revealing this Quran to you. So when the story is understood as a story of resignation, for instance, as an example, we learn no new healing practical wisdom. Is there any hikmah that I learned? Then the story doesn't seem relevant to my situation here and now. I don't see the rahmah in it. Only maybe some vague moral stand. When in hardship, do not complain. But practically, most people would say, yes, but Yusuf alayhi salam, he was a prophet. I am not. How can I be patient like him? And this way, again, avoid responsibility. But this kind of attitude, and this is very, very, how do you say? Do you say prevalent? I think, yeah, prevalent among Muslims. We say, yeah, but he is a prophet. Then this means, this reveals a lack of understanding of who the prophets are. What is their role in our lives? He is a prophet, it means bring him into your life. No, we say he's a prophet, therefore throw him out. Astaghfirullah. And why we are not clear about who the prophets are, and they are not our living examples, because we don't understand what the Quran is about. The way we read the Quran, we don't read the Quran. I read as if it's a story. Allah is not telling me stories. He's teaching wisdom. Remember at the very beginning we said when we listen to the Quran, the Quran says it's going to bring wisdom, healing, rahmah. If it doesn't, then something is wrong in my reading, in my listening. And that's why it says in 105 of this surah, وَكَأَيٍّ مِّنْ آيَةٍ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ يَمُرُّونَ عَلَيْهَا وَهُمْ عَنْهَا مُعْرِضُونَ. There are so many signs in the heavens and earth, they passed by and they turn their back on them. They are not even aware of them. Either they're not aware of them or they know and they don't take them seriously. So the ayat here are in the world. And if I don't live with the consciousness that everything in the world is an ayah, I am not going to understand the ayat in the book, in the Quran. Because the Quran is not only a book, it is a message that guides us through life. It is a message of wisdom. Wisdom that teaches us the meaning of events in the world. This means it is a message of guidance. It guides us through life. And that's exactly what the next ayah, the next and last ayah, 111 tells us. It says that the Quran is تفصيل كل شيء وهدى ورحمة لقوم يؤمنون. A deep للألباب ما كان حديثا يفترى ولكن تصديق الذي بين يديه وتفصيل كل شيء وهدى ورحمة لقوم يؤمنون. So it said, certainly in the stories of the bygone people, there is a lesson for people endowed with insight. This narration has not been invented. Well, this is not a narration that has been invented, but confirmation of all that came before, and a detailed clarification of everything, and a guidance and rahmah, mercy for people who believe. This is how this surah ends, subhanallah. So what it is telling us? The Quran gives details of everything. What does it mean? If someone did not really listen and read and get something, when we understand something, it doesn't mean that we exhausted the meaning of the ayah, of the surah, sorry. But if we do not benefit from its guidance, then we say, what are the details of everything? It doesn't mean the details of all your life, or science, or whatever it is. It means the details of everything that is required for our guidance. Remember, we learned that through reading this story, that how or how this story provides us with special guidance in all the details of Yusuf alayhi salam's life. And that's, you can take it as a model for every life, every hardship, every... So it does provide all the tafsila kulli shay. But kulli shay is what? That is needed. Anything else is superfluous. So when we say the Quran is a source of guidance, I will ask, guidance to what? Or maybe we need to first ask, do we need guidance? Or do we feel an inner need for guidance like we do for food when we are hungry? Or when in our life do we stop and realize our need for guidance, whatever this guidance is, from the Quran? Don't we think most of the time that we know what should be done with our life? We have plans for ourselves, for our kids, how to send them to school, make a living, a career. In all those plans, where does Quranic guidance come in? Where is the connection? Do we ever realize the connection with divine guidance of our life events, with divine guidance? Apart from times of crisis, that doesn't count. What is the Quran? Back to the beginning. Because guidance of the Quran, is it only about telling me to fast and pray? What about in between? How is that related to Akhirah? How am I supposed, especially for Akhirah, the Quran again and again doesn't only say they believe, it says yuqinun, they have certainty. Not only you believe, you are certain. Can you imagine? Subhanallah. So again, it goes back to the message, the Quran. What is it? What is this guidance that is what makes the Quran the Quran, that makes it so important? That the whole story is about this. It is not some invention or something. It is confirmation of all the messages that came before and a detailed clarification of everything and a guidance and rahmah. But for whom? For people who believe. Of course, for people who believe without shirk. Remember, those who are disappointed in the prophets, they are not clear about their needs and therefore about the nature of the message sent with the prophets. So the key here is vulnerability. This is what the prophets teach us. This is what the gist of Ubudiyah. The prophets are not some kind of heroes, some kind of super beings, some kind of powerful beings like we may want to see in our mind. They do not teach us how to acquire power. They do not teach us power. They don't teach us independence from our Rabb. They are not, when we look at Surat Yusuf, Yusuf alayhi salam is not after some grand achievements. I mean, if he were like the king of Egypt that time, then the Ghafils, they would have said yes to them. Oh yeah, these messengers they have something to teach us. But you see at the messengers, and people don't see anything to learn from them because the messengers are teaching something that the Ghafil is trying to avoid. That you are in need, you are abd, and you have a Rabb that is taking care of you. Of course, the good news is the other side. I have a Rabb that is taking care of me. That's so beautiful. But we don't want to start with the first step, which is to be in touch with our own needs, our own vulnerability, our own ubudiyya, to accept that part. So remember the situation of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ at the time this surah was revealed. The leaders of Quraysh rejected him. They feared his message, not the number of his followers, as some Muslim historians write, because the numbers of Muslims that time, when they were still in Mecca, before the hijrah to Medina, was very limited. Few dozens only. So the leaders of Quraysh, they were uneasy with the message because the message was under, how do you say, their values was, what do? You under what? Help. Anyways, so it was going against their values, let's say. Destabilizing their values. I can't remember the words.
Undermined?
Undermined. Thank you. Yes. So his message was undermining their values. So they decided to deal with the issue politically. And so they decided to bribe him. And they offered him wealth and power. They said, all of us will give you wealth so that you will become the wealthiest. And we will make you our ruler, so you'll have the power. But you have to give up this message. And what do you think the Prophet ﷺ did? He refused. He refused to give up teaching the message, living the message, because he believed in it. So Quraysh persecuted the Muslims and finally banished them into a dry valley, and they forbade anyone to trade with them. And it is then that Khadija radiallahu anha and Abu Talib, the Prophet ﷺ's uncle, who used to love him and help him, both died during this boycott. And the Prophet ﷺ sent a small group of Muslims to Ethiopia to seek asylum and protection from persecution. The situation was very hard. So they were received by the Negus of Ethiopia. And that year is known as the Year of Sadness. And this is when Surat Yusuf was revealed. So he was not given wealth and power. He was not inspired to accept the wealth of power. He could have protected himself and his follower, it seems. It seems to us, right? It seems very wise. If you are in that situation when you are so weak and the people around you are so determined to not accept you, then why not accept their wealth, accept the power, and then you don't teach the message openly. Slowly, you start doing whatever you want. It seems wise according to the ghafil, but is it real wisdom? It would miss the point totally. The Prophet ﷺ did not accept that offer because it would go against his integrity. It would go against the integrity of the message. And I'm not saying only because you have to say no, so it's integrity. No, I'm saying from an existence point of view, ontologically. To accept that offer would contradict the message of Tawheed. The message of Tawheed is that everything is in God's control and only in God's control. In al-hukmu illa lillah was repeated many times in this surah. So to accept that offer would mean that God is not enough. When we repeat again, Hasbunallah, when we say Hasbunallah, we're saying Allah is enough for us. And when I accept, if he had accepted the offer, so integrity is a matter of existence. Just like the message is not just a book, it's just not a word. It is words that are reality, that describe the reality. His stand is in not contradiction, but the other way around, is in accordance with the reality of Tawheed, that everything is in God's control only. And to accept that offer would reveal a shirk attitude. So when I say, oh, it would be very wise, I'll say yes, and then I will cheat them and teach the message in other ways. If someone does that, I wouldn't believe in him, because he's telling me God has the final word about everything, but he doesn't practice it. And in 12:108, the ayah that we started with today, he was told to tell them what? وَمَا أَنَا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. I'm definitely not a mushrik. I'm definitely not going to commit shirk. I definitely stand for Tawheed. I definitely believe that in al-hukmu illa lillah, that everything is in God's control. And that's exactly what this last ayah is saying. Just when they all it seems like everything is lost, then Allah's help comes and he saves the messengers and their followers. And we don't know how it comes, in which form, because remember, the worldly life, this world is not our point of reference, and we keep forgetting that. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ used to supplicate very often, Allahumma la mani'a lima a'tayta wa la mu'tiya lima mana'ta wa la yanfa'u dhal jaddi minka al-jadd. You probably heard this prayer a lot. Oh Allah, oh God, there is none who can avert what you grant or give, and no one can give what you deprive, and no fortune ever helps the fortune against you. And it says in Surat Yunus that we've been reading before about the people who make dua, who ask help from God and then forget. And then it says, don't you see that the life of this world is like water coming from the earth, and then nature is so beautiful and then everything dries up? In that surah, in Surah 10, Ayah 107, it says, وَإِنْ يَمْسَسْكَ اللَّهُ بِضُرٍّ فَلَا كَاشِفَ لَهُ إِلَّا هُوَ وَإِنْ يُرِدْكَ بِخَيْرٍ فَلَا رَادَّ لِفَضْلِهِ يُصِيبُ بِهِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ وَهُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ. And know that if God should touch you with misfortune, there is none who could remove it save him. And if he intends good for you, there is none who could turn away his bounty from you. He causes it to alight upon whomever he wills of his ibad. And he alone is truly forgiving, truly a dispenser of, truly Rahim. He is Ghafoor, so we keep forgetting this, and that's why we need to make istighfar and again. And there are lots of ayats you can check in Surah 6, ayah 17 and 18, how it says that if something harms you, no one can take it from you except him, remove it from you except him. And if something good happens to you, فهو على كل شيء قدير. Know that he has the power to will anything. وهو القاهر فوق عباده والحكيم الخبير. And he is the one who has control over all his ibad, and he alone is truly wise, all aware. And I used to think that Qahir is like, how can it be a beautiful name? But then I checked, and it was always Al-Qahiru fawqa ibadihi, which means he's the one who has control over all his ibad. So it makes you feel safe, alhamdulillah, because anything can harm me, but no, they can't, because he is Al-Qahir over everything. God is in control, and only he is in control. And he is Latif, he is Rahim, he is so merciful. So we are safe. And it carries on. I think I want to share some other points here, so I will just tell you to go and read the next one after 17 and 18 in the same surah, surah 6, ayah 19. The next ayah is just so beautiful, and it ends with إنما هو إله واحد وإنني بريء بما تشركون. Again, there is only one God. So behold, I am far from whatever you ascribe, you commit shirk with. I am not going to be part of your shirk. No way. Subhanallah. And this is this refusal to be a mushrik, this clarity about the possibility of falling into shirk, and therefore always making istighfar and always remembering and always renewing that intention to stay in that state of tawheed, in that state of ubudiyah. You can see it throughout the Surat Yusuf. Remember when Yusuf, when he interprets the visions of the fellow prisoners, he states that it is his Rabb's gift to him. The first thing he says is that it is taught to him by his Rabb. So the prophets are these transparent mirrors to the divine rahmah, to his hikmah. And through that, they are teaching us how to be transparent. To be transparent in the sense of be clean and clear of shirk. To never stand in the way, to not be an obstacle to rububiyyah, to not claim anything in their own name. No shirk in the attitude, in their speech, in their deeds. We forget, we think that we are doing, we are finding, we are creating, but we are not. It is all gifts to us. So that's why they are so grateful. So again, the prophets are muhsins, they are leaders in ubudiyyah, and ubudiyyah is their most important goal in life, and everything else falls under ubudiyyah. They make all their decisions accordingly. And that's all. They know that they came to this world to journey, like the Prophet ﷺ says. And it's a very short journey, because compared to the coming one, to they're journeying, passing through this passing world, going to eternity. And they did not deal with anything else. And of course, you may say, some people, because when you read tafsirs about Surat Yusuf, you find lots of discussions about power. Because Yusuf ended up being a powerful ruler. Yes, it's true, but how did he become a ruler? I mean, this surah is not about teaching us how to become a ruler. What was it ever his goal in life? Did Yusuf a.s. ever dream let alone plan to become a ruler, to become powerful. Until few minutes before his appointment, did he even know he would be made a ruler? In this story, in this surah, it was clearly part of the divine plan for Yusuf. And Yusuf alayhi salam surrendered to that plan, even when he was in prison for many years without committing a crime. And he never forced the conditions in order to become a ruler. He never bargained for that position. He never compromised his integrity or the truth of his message or the truth of Tawheed in order to get that position. In fact, when the king asked him out, you remember, it was strange because his first response was to clear his name instead of making sure he gets the position and then deal with that. No, that integrity is more important because he's not here to be a ruler. And so what if he's a ruler? When he became a ruler, what did he say? توفني مسلما والحقني بالصالحين. He wished to leave this world as a surrenderer because he knows that, so what if he's a ruler? This world is not anything, can't be the point of reference for anything because it's passing. You're a ruler today, you are not tomorrow. You're not even in this world tomorrow. So he wasn't worried about missing the opportunity or anything like that because he knew if it is meant to be, bi-idhnillah, it is. And if it is not meant to be, no one could help him. As we are told again and again in the Quran. You can check this ayah 2 of Surah 35. And also, when we are in that state of ghafla, we tend to assume that being powerful, being a ruler, is better. But here, being a ruler or being, it's not the same, of course, Yusuf al-Salam being a ruler and being in prison is not the same, but both in different ways, in both conditions, he was living his ubudiyah perfectly. And just in case we are not convinced that this story is not teaching us how to become a ruler, remember that the conditions that led to Yusuf's appointment as a ruler were beyond any human power or knowledge or planning or control. Even if Yusuf was not alone, he had helpers, even the king wanted to help him, it would not have happened. There were the dreams of the two prisoners years before. There was Yusuf interpreting them correctly. There was the king having a dream many years later. There is the prisoner remembering Yusuf. And then Yusuf interpreting the king's dream correctly. And especially the 7 years of abundance, the 7 years of drought and scarcity. Who can control the weather and the climate and plan so that Yusuf alayhi salam will become a ruler? So this is actually telling us, stop making plans. Allah is the one who makes the plans, not you. You just surrender. You surrender, you trust that He is the best planner for you. He knows what is best for you. That is the hikmah. To know that I don't know, and to surrender and trust the one who knows. So we don't need power, we need God, and we need His hikmah. And He is the one who gives hikmah. He gives it to those who surrenders, who are muhsins. And if His hikmah requires that we be given power, we will, bi-idhnillah. And if not, we won't, bi-idhnillah. And does it make a difference? When you are a muhsin, when you know that everything is fani, everything is passing, then you realize that it's not a big deal. Yes, you may be made to want one rather than the other, but we can never be sure. Only God knows. He alone can decide because He alone knows. And it's not about us. It's not about us being powerful or weak, because that would be a delusion. Power is an area, just like a weakness. Weakness is an area, so we realize that there is a power taking care of us. And power is an area again, like everything else. It's an area reflecting God's power. And alhamdulillah that He alone is powerful. I mean, stop and reflect on what this means. Alhamdulillah that He alone is powerful. It may not seem like that, right? Because it seems like there are powers out there other than God in the world, and they can harm us even. So what shall we do? So it wouldn't harm to have power ourselves. But where is Tawheed in this? Why? Let's stop and reflect. Why do I perceive the world in this way? How do I make istighfar for this misperception? And remember again that Yusuf alayhi salam, when he was in that position of power, he did not ask God to help him remain there. I'm thinking, what would we ask? We would say, okay, let's make sure that we remain here forever. He doesn't ask that because he knows that he will leave anyways. And that even when he is there, he is only acting Bismillah in the name of God, not in his name, in the name of the powerful. So, because we may think, the stronger we are, the more powerful we are, we rationalize it, we say, I will stand for the weak, I will help. But just a second, if Allah wants to help through you, He will. If He doesn't want, we are not helpers, He is the helper. And because Yusuf alayhi salam trusts Allah's wisdom, then he does not make such a dua. If Allah's wisdom requires it, He will keep him in that position. Just as He's brought him into it in the first place from unexpected ways. It's none of his business. He knows that it's none of his business because Yusuf alayhi salam is aware that he doesn't know what is best for him. Only his Rabb does. And also Yusuf alayhi salam knows that God doesn't need his help or our help to maintain justice in the world or anything. And even more important, he knows that this world is not and cannot be our point of reference for anything, since it is fani, and since the source is somewhere else. And remember, this world is fani, then I see everything as a sign, as an ayah. Then I'm not fixed on power and afraid of weakness. I embrace both as ayah. And that's why it says in the Quran, or in Surat Yusuf in 67 and 68, remember that when Yaqub alayhi salam was speaking to his son, he says, وَمَا أُغْنِي عَنْكُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ إِنِ الْحُكْمُ إِلَّا لِلَّهِ. And I cannot save you from whatever Allah has for you, decreed, because the judgment belongs to Him alone. And then says, عَلَيْهِ تَوَكَّلْتُ وَعَلَيْهِ تَوَكَّلْ مُتَوَكِّلُونَ. And it actually says in Ayah 139 of Surah 4. Oh no, sorry. Ayah 10 of Surah 35. من كان يريد العزة فلله العزة جميعا. If anyone desires power and glory, all power and glory belong to God. So good words rise up to him and he lifts up the righteous deed. So the prophets surrender to divine wisdom. They trust God. They are surrenderers, Muslimin, always, in every situation, whether it appears to be good or it appears to be bad. Because the prophets are muhsins. And so what it means is that they're aware that they don't know. And so they trust the one who knows. And because they trust, they are open to the possibility of seeing the other aspect, the ayah aspect that looks to the beautiful qualities of God. And so everything becomes like a mirror to them. They can see the aspect of all things that look to the divine names, to Akhirah. And they themselves, their lives are like mirrors to the divine names. They are like mirrors because of their total acceptance of their vulnerability, which is the key to Ubudiyyah. قل اللهم مالك الملك تؤتي الملك من تشاء وتنزع الملك ممن تشاء وتعز من تشاء وتذل من تشاء بيدك الخير إنك على كل شيء قدير. This is a beautiful dua. It's also an ayah from the Quran. I want to end this beautiful surah, this beautiful story with it. It's from Ayah 26 of Surah 3, say, O God, owner of sovereignty, you give sovereignty to whomever you will, and you take sovereignty away from whomever you will. You honor whom you will, and you humble whom you will. In your hand is all good. Indeed, you are all powerful over all things. Thank you.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Yamina, for this beautiful session. And it's almost 10:30 now. Shall we have any questions or comments?
Jazakallah khair, Isra. I was talking, but I didn't realize I was muted while talking.
Okay, please go ahead.
I have a comment. I think today I feel that like Yamina, you took us into a depth and a realization of what is the message, and this is like a powerful and a very crucial understanding that that the message of Ubudiyyah means that we're always connected, and those of us who don't see that we're connected miss the whole point. And I guess one of the things that that might help us, for those of us who are just realizing this and want to stay connected, is to share the moments that they feel connected, like to share the moments that when they get their wahi. Like, you know, just like Musa, God has given her a wahi to nurse her child and put him in the river. That Yusuf, before being a prophet, when he was in the well, he had a wahi from God that a day will come and he will remind his brothers about this. So like you said, the bees have wahi. Each of us, like, you know, have a wahi that comes to them. I was looking for something the other day, kept looking. Then all of a sudden, after a few days, I was sitting in the car and, something told me, like, just look now under this place, which I'd never looked at before. So I think if we all start realizing that God speaks to us personally, Like, that when these things don't happen, like, oh, I was lucky, I just remembered. Like, if we start calling it the right thing, God talked to me, God, gave me wahi to look here, and I'm thankful for this wahi because I've been looking for this thing and God made it easy, then then we will build this trust that, that it's not was just like my good luck that I remembered all of a sudden. No, that this was actually wahi that came to me. To look in this place because God wanted to make it easy for me.
Let's say guidance.
Yes. So maybe the rest of the group, have you ever had these moments of guidance where you felt God was speaking direct to you, and can you share them with us? Because these are the things that will help us stay away from forgetting that God is always connected and guiding us.
Alia, I want to emphasize a point here is, yes, as you said, this could be a point to start. However, this is not what reading the ayat in creation is about. Reading the ayat in creation is everything, not something special, something out of what we call the ordinary. When I'm drinking water, when I'm breathing, when I'm right now talking, when I'm thinking, every single thing that we think is ordinary is actually, as an ayah, is actually, when we stop and reflect about it, extraordinary, ordinary in our own ghafla language. Actually, they're all signs. Why? Because it's not about ordinary or extraordinary. It's about sign is they indicate something else. It's not about that thing itself. It is telling us, reflecting to us a completely different world. I mean, it's just amazing. And so are the verses of the Quran. There were only how many verses left? 9, 10, and 11. 3 verses, 3 ayat, 3 signs. And when I first read them, it looked like a small dot to me. Subhanallah. And then, as you get closer, it's not a dot, it's a hole. And when you look through the hole, you start seeing things. And then you start seeing so many things that, okay, wait a minute, I'm going to take note here and a note here, and how are these things related? You start wondering. And so is it for those things that we take for granted. So it doesn't have to be something special when I'm looking under, I receive like a different feeling or something, although that's included. But if we focus on only those things, we're going to miss the main bulk of the ayat, which is what the Quran talks about. The Quran doesn't talk much about special miracles or special cases. It talks mostly about the rain, the day and the night, the sea, the food. It's talking about things that we see every day. Say, look at your food, how you eat. That's very important, inshallah. If we decide to carry on with Surah Al-Ra'd, which is the next surah right after Surat Yusuf, it focuses on the signs, the ayat in creation. And it's interesting because Surah Al-Ra'd starts with Alif Lam Mim Ra تلك آيات الكتاب والذي أنزل إليك من ربك الحق ولكن أكثر الناس لا يؤمنون. So it's saying these are the ayat of the scripture, and what has been bestowed upon you from on high by your Rabb is the truth, yet most people will not believe. It starts where Surah Yusuf ends, and it's going to tell us what I try to give a hint to in today is actually explained in detail in the next surah, because the chapters of the Quran are not arranged haphazardly. They're all connected to each other. Although usually Orientalists will say they are not connected because they can't see the connection. Just because you can't see it, it doesn't mean it's not there. But if you are not just reading the text, but actually following the ayat, then you will see that they are very, very connected. Alhamdulillah.
Jazakallah khair, Yamina. So again, that is, the correction is important because now I'm seeing. So it's most important to realize that there's nothing extraordinary versus ordinary. Everything is extraordinary because everything is coming from God all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
or let's say, extraordinary from the beginning we'll use that, but ayah is better because it's also telling us what it is. It has this function, a sign, like a word. When I say a pen, I have a pen in my hand. All of you imagine something. I really took the pen in my hand. Imagine a kind of tool to write. Why? Because the word pen, P-E-N, is a sign to something. And so it's a word, it has nothing to do with the pen in my hand, but it points to it. And so are the signs in the world. They have nothing to do with the divine names directly, but the best metaphor that I've came through so far is the metaphor of the mirror. Like what is reflected in the mirror is not, the reflection is not what is reflected, but it is not separate from it because it's coming through it. And so ayah, extraordinary in the beginning to get rid of ordinary, and then inshallah we'll get rid of extraordinary and focus on ayah, inshallah.
Okay, so step one, extraordinary versus ordinary is not right. Everything is extraordinary. Step two, everything is an ayah.
Ayah, it means it's a language that we need to learn. That's what it means. It's a language. It's the language of the divine names.
Jazakallah khair, Yamina. Sisters, does anyone?
If we have a minute for a question, I want to ask something, but if it is too late, I can ask later.
Go ahead and ask. You already saying you have a question.
Thank you. Well, Yamina, you said like when we read the Quran, like it's a guidance for us to understand the verses and or like ayat in the universe. When somebody reads Quran and understands some things from it, even in the beginning of this surah when we were studying, you mentioned this, and today you mentioned that there are some things that we have to look like, is this bringing any enlightenment into my life? Is this like bringing any wisdom? And you mentioned a few things like this. So basically, these are the kind of criteria that we look at. Sometimes we read the Quran and we understand something, but everybody can understand a different thing from it. I was thinking about an example. For example, you mentioned Surat Rad, and there is one of my favorite verses there, like something similar to this meaning. The hearts will be only satisfied with remembrance of Allah. This is in Surah Rad. Somebody can read this and have a different understanding. For example, somebody can just start making zikr, saying La ilaha illallah all day. And then what you suggested was just to go and look at the universe or see in your own world, does it change anything? And the person who does this zikr, La ilaha illallah or Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, or Allah, and whatever zikr they want to do, and then they can just find themselves in peace, and it's bringing it makes them really different, just to make that zikr. And they may be saying that, oh yes, now I believe in this is really true, and that brings some peace in my life. But then somebody else can come up and then they can say, no, it's not that what it means, and it's just like seeing the names of God everywhere and trying to read the universe like this. And they have a different method of approach and tahqiq. And this second group can come and say like the first person, like, oh, okay, you didn't understand this, right? This is the way it should be. So, I mean, long story short, I keep it very long, but what I mean is, the first person has also understood something and then it went into, look into himself or herself and said that, oh yes, this is really true. It's bringing something into my life.
Yes.
And then second was like saying something else and it brings something else to their life. I mean, the second person cannot come to first one and say like, you didn't get it right and things like that. But
Sure.
what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think you are right. No, unless the first person is saying it without experiencing it. I mean, from the beginning, what you're saying here is that both are confirming actually what the verse is saying in different ways. So I didn't get why would one of them need to belie the other or say to the other one, you're not doing it the right way? Because who said that an ayah? If I say an ayah means this and only this, it means I am not dealing with it as an ayah. Because an ayah means that it is indicating, pointing to something. It's like a signpost. And what it is pointing to is so vast. I cannot fathom it. I cannot know all of it. And so if I really, once I realize what an ayah is, I cannot say this is what the ayah means. Because then I'm not saying this is, I'm saying this is what this sentence means. Because if it is an ayah, it is a sign, it is pointing to something, I say, oh, I realize that it's pointing to something like this. And the other one says that and says, subhanallah, it means it has another meaning. And as long as it does not contradict the obvious, the literal meaning, then why not? Instead of saying something else, because I don't know if you were with us once, we were just repeating some verses from the Quran as making a dhikr, and someone says this is bid'ah, and I said, do you watch TV? Yes. So when you watch TV, it's okay, but when we spend the evening repeating verses from the Quran, what is the difference when you read the Quran once or we are repeating it 10 times, let's say? Why is this bid'ah? Subhanallah. And of course, I had to find a hadith, and when she saw the hadith, she stopped, and inshallah, she will think about it, about dhikr, about the companions repeating the Quran. But whether they repeated it or not, it is the Quran, and there is something that when we repeat something, it becomes more and more part of us. And people repeat songs, repeat other things. We do repeat things. So why not repeat something that makes more sense to us, something that I want to remember? I want to remember Hasbunallah, for instance. God is enough for us. So even if I had not done it before, if someone tells me, you know, أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبِ is, if you keep saying Allah, you will feel something in your heart, I say, subhanallah. There is a point, if I have not done it, I may want to go and try it. Because their remembering includes all types of remembering. But someone says, but these people, they just repeat the name, but they don't actually remember God in their life. Well, it's their problem if they don't. But if you do remember God in your life, it's definitely going to show up in our language as well. So we will keep saying MashaAllah, inshallah, alhamdulillah, hada min fadlillah. It's going to show in our tongue as well. And it is true that if I repeat the name of God always, it's more likely to remind me to remember the ayats everywhere. So there are different, not only degrees, there are also different perspectives, different names. People see things from different angles. If someone, it's not about right and wrong, and if someone says this, it means this, and it doesn't mean that, then they are looking at the text, at the sentence, and not as at the ayah. The Quran calls its unit ayahs, not a text, not a verse, not a sentence. Although it is made up out of a sentence, but that sentence means, indicates many meanings, alhamdulillah. So you are right, there is no, it's pointless to say you are wrong and I am right, or this ayah means this. How do you know? That's how, what have been what I have been inspired to. I can only talk that much because otherwise I am unaware of my own limitations. I am unaware that I do not understand anything. I am made to see something as much as I can. And my seeing is limited with my own ability, my own capacity, my own clarity of perception. I could be the one who is veiled, who has not been able to see as clearly as the other one. How do I know?
And also, Yamina and Isra, by your own experience at that time. Like last week, we had Sister Fatima's husband, Brother Ibrahim from China. He came and he shared with us his reflections on Surat Yusuf. Isn't that amazing? And his reflections were totally different than what we are discussing. Totally different, because he focused on it from a perspective of someone who came from a family of faith, like, you know, and lived between people out of his community of faith. And because he himself lives in China and lived, like, you know, within the whole China, which is not Muslims, you know, after leaving like his community of faith and going to Beijing, the big city, and then coming to here. So his heart, like what his heart saw in Surat Yusuf and resonated with was the meanings that he's going through in his own life. And I find that very amazing, because like in science, you know, our vocal tract, like, you know, resonates different, like the shape of our vocal tract becomes our own, like, you know, voice, a signature, because each of us have different dimensions that resonate sound differently. And that sound becomes very unique for each of us. And it's the same with our heart. It seems that our heart reads the Quran, and each of us, according to what is going on in their life, bring out a totally unique meaning that is very specific for that person. So I guess Isra and, you know, and what Yamina was telling us is not only that each of us sees something from a different perspective, no, but also each of us, according to their point in life and what's going on in their life, is going to find a new meaning.
And alhamdulillah that it would be boring if everyone was, we learn from each other like this way.
And also, if I may add one more thing, the fact that there are layers of meaning and different, not just layers, but different aspects, facets of meaning, does not exclude that some meanings may be more profound than others.
That is true. And some more profound, or maybe more central, let's say. It could be
more insightful. Like
Yeah, that's true. Thank you.
Isra, your example reminded me, Imam Ghazali gives this example about this verse that says, everything in the heavens and the earth glorify God. He says some people think that everything in the heavens and earth glorify God, but in a voice we can't hear. Possible, he says. Possible, you know. But some other people think that things glorify God through their own being, the way they are, just as an artwork would talk about its artist. So he says both meanings are possible, but the second one is more profound because it's more applicable as well to the rest of the Quran. It's about seeing the ayat. The first one can become lazy also.
And
like things are glorifying God, but I don't understand the one. The other one, things are glorifying. Yeah.
The second one is the second one includes the others.
Yeah. Yeah, can include the other.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you. This is also very important. Because otherwise it would be yes, they are all they can. It's not like we dismiss one or the other. However, we make choices as well, because one can be more profound, more brings more light. They are all lights, but one of them is a more powerful light, enlightens your world better. But it doesn't mean that the other one is not a light, even if it's dimmer, at least in your perspective. Or as Isra said, it applies to the Quran better. It brings more light from the Quran. Because if you say, they make tasbih and we don't know, that's what the Quran says. Most people don't know. But those who know, they know. So actually, according to the Quran, it's saying most people don't know, but those who follow the guidance of the Quran know what the tasbih is. So yeah, thank you, Isra, for the clarification.
Thank you very much to all, and it was a very beautiful lecture, mashallah. A lot of good points, mashallah.
I think maybe we need to have a Isra, are you going to say anything about when are we going to start? Maybe not next week, especially that I think this last class we can listen to it again, because I myself was not expecting that much to come up out of the three last ayat. So I don't know what was the decision about, or shall we just email?
Yeah, so basically this is the official end of Surah Yusuf study, and we are hoping to continue to study the Quran very soon, and we will announce. Most likely the date will be Tuesday night, which would mean that we would meet 3 weeks, and then the 4th week would be the teleconference in the beginning of each month.
So we will be meeting, inshallah, bi'idhnillah, next week, but not for the Quran, but for the monthly teleconference.
Yeah, next Tuesday is monthly teleconference, yes, inshallah. So there is no Quran study next week per se, but there is a Quranic wisdom session through the monthly teleconference, inshallah, on this coming Tuesday. And then either the following week or the week after, we will resume our Quran study. So we will keep you updated through Always Receiving Nur.
And inshallah, we thought that if it is on Tuesdays, then it won't be confusing, because we have Thursdays, and then the first Tuesday of every month is a teleconference. way it will be every Tuesday at 8:30. There will be a Quranic study, and once a month, every fourth Tuesday, it will be Quranic wisdom, inshallah. So it will be easier, inshallah, to follow.
And this is open to everyone, including brothers, inshallah.